I'm sure by now many of us already know the story of Kingdom Hearts Key back cover, but I know there are some people who are more interested in trying to get into the lore now post Kingdom Hearts 3, or at least sidetrack and reaffirm everything that they actually need to know. That way things can make a little bit more sense. So I am going to recap Kingdom Hearts Key back cover here, just so we're all on the same page, as certain things that happen in that movie are actually relevant to this video. But basically all you really need to know about the Key back cover movie is that we got the introduction of the foretellers. It's similar to the Kingdom Hearts Key game, but instead of us seeing from our own player's perspective, we're actually seeing the perspective of the foretellers of this similar story and what actually led to the events of the Keyblade War. And what ended up causing the Keyblade War to actually commence was the Master of Masters went to each individual foreteller and told them that if he were to ever disappear one day, then he needed them to follow each of the roles that he was giving to each of them. And of course he pulled them each aside at different times to actually tell them these roles. That way, until later on when he was already gone, they wouldn't know that their roles actually conflicted with one another. Now, I think personally that this all could have been avoided if they just brought up what their roles were, but not everybody even knew that the master even gave them roles. So that one specific person, say Gula for example, he may not have known that Aced or Ira even had a role by the master. He could have thought that it was just one given to him for just in case the master ended up disappearing. Now, out of all the foretellers who ended up having interactions with the Master of Masters during the Kingdom Hearts Key back cover movie, I think for this video specifically, as you can tell by the title, I think Ava's was the most important to the entire series, to the future of what was coming forward, mainly because of the role that she received. Her role was to create something called the Dandelions. They would pretty much be the Keyblade wielders who don't end up participating in the Keyblade War. That way they can survive for the world to come. Now, this was honestly a pretty good idea, because if every Keyblade wielder died in the war, that would kind of be unfortunate, but this is really gonna play into something big here. Now, what we actually didn't see in the Kingdom Hearts Key back cover movie, but we actually saw in the Kingdom Hearts Key games, was that the Master of Master had actually told Ava to appoint certain people to be union leaders, because when these dandelions would leave for a different world line to escape the Keyblade War, they needed to have leaders, within their own groups to actually be governed over these other Keyblade wielders, because not all of them could be in charge. And he gave her a set of people to choose from that the master himself handpicked for these people. Keep that in mind as we're going to transition to actually the Kingdom Hearts 3 epilogue, where we saw the big revelation that Lushu, the sixth foreteller who was cast out, was given the Master of Masters Keyblade, was actually Xigbar the entire time. Xigbar, Eye Patch, Organization 13. It was actually a pretty grand discovery that, honestly, thinking back to it when I'm not, recording or something, that was actually a pretty crazy reveal. I had zero idea that that would be the case, especially when you look in hindsight. You can actually see certain things were hinting at it from a long time ago, that you can tell this wasn't something Nomura just pulled out of his butt. But during the Kingdom Hearts 3 epilogue, we see Lushu actually summon the foretellers back to the future. Now, this is what's really cool about this. What's strange is that Lushu doesn't actually summon Ava, and Gula takes note of this and thinks that Lushu is actually trying to exclude her. But then that's when Lushu kind of tells him this isn't the case, and that Ava had her own mission and that she carried it out, with a smirk on his face. For a second, let's focus on when these foretellers were actually summoned, because as we know, each of the foretellers, excluding Ava and Lushu, actually participated in the fights of the Keyblade War. Now, if this is the case, obviously we don't really know what happened to the foretellers, but as far as we know, thanks to the Keylake Graveyard, there were no survivors of that war. So, and I'm assuming that includes the foretellers. So if he were to summon the foretellers from the past, he would likely have to do it where it would make most logical sense, to where if he summoned them, they wouldn't immediately try to fight each other. Now, I think this was probably a little bit before the Keyblade War. This makes the most sense because obviously when we see them in the actual epilogue, they don't seem to be fighting with one another or having any kind of resentment for each other. But them obviously being in the future now, Lushu still ended up having this confrontation that he had with Ava. As we know, when we see in the Kingdom Hearts Key game, we saw that when the bells rang, Lushu and Ava actually technically were the initiation of the Keyblade War, but they don't necessarily know that because they weren't there at that moment. Lushu knows because to him that's the past, while the rest of the foretellers, that would likely be more recent because they kind of just time traveled. But at this point, Lushu is referring to a confrontation with Ava Ava after their initial confrontation where they actually struck and had a fight. Rewinding a little bit, when Lucio said she had her own mission and she carried it out. This is a really peculiar statement because a lot of people kind of assumed that Lucio was talking about the Dandelion mission, you know, the mission that was given to her by the Master of Masters. But when you really dig deeper and look into this, that doesn't really make logical sense, because it wouldn't really make sense for that to be the case, because the Dandelions were already a thing. Even in the Key back cover movie, she had already completed that role. The Dandelions already were a thing. She did send those people to another world line. This has already come to pass. So if she couldn't be summoned because she's carrying out a mission, she had already completed that. It wouldn't make logical sense for her to be doing that mission and that be why she couldn't participate. It's already done. So suspend disbelief here for a moment, but we're about to get a little bit deeper into I guess you could call it theory territory, you know, relative to this entire video's title. But I think it's possible that Master Ava was actually contacted after being told which people to appoint to be union leaders by who I believe to be Brain. It's kind of a spoiler for one of the next couple videos I'm working on, but I believe Brain is actually from the future, knowing the dark fate that lies ahead for the union leaders. I'd like to go more into detail about that, but if you're interested in hearing about that story, subscribing and hitting that notification bell icon is just what you're looking for. And Brain doing his best to persuade Master Ava with the knowledge and insight that he actually contains, I believe he actually won Ava over, because things would just make too much sense. If a random person was able to tell you a lot of things that he technically shouldn't know, I think that would kind of persuade anybody into more believing that they know something that I probably don't. So that's why I believe he may have won Master Ava over and actually ended up defying what the Master's original plans were, and to do a little something we're about to get to in a second. Like I mentioned before, to keep this in mind, that the Master of Masters himself personally chose all of the union leaders by hand. But if you go and think about it, if Strelitzia, who was chosen by the Master to be one of the union leaders, died before they switched world lines, then how could Ava have accidentally mistaken Brain for Strelitzia? Because Brain was the one who ended up being sent to that other world line, because she's the one who sent them to the other world line to avoid the Keyblade War. That's how they're even there in Union Cross. If she knew who was supposed to be sent because the Master of Masters told her who to send, how could she make a mistake like this? I think the answer to that is she didn't make a mistake. She trusted in the insight held by Brain, and as Lucio called it, did the old switcheroo and replaced her with Brain, knowing that he could guide the union leaders. But then things started to go wrong in the other world line, similar to what Brain had been preaching to the other union leaders, and what I'm playing at what he probably told Ava, that things started going wrong, as we're actually even seeing in Kingdom Hearts Union Cross right now. The glitches are starting to appear all over the world of Union Cross, and even as Lucio states in Secret Report number 12, even on a world line with no Keyblade War, peace is but a dream. In the absence of us and our master, a darkness arrived, one that shall surely lead the world to yet another demise. This lines up exactly with what Brain was saying and what he's trying to avoid. Before this, Lucio actually caught wind of the old switcheroo that ended up taking place within the union leaders, that one of them actually was never meant to be a union leader, as Lucio doesn't technically know what's going to happen in the future, as he was supposed to go forward without a book of prophecies, as we see in the Kingdom Hearts Key back cover movie. But because of this, he ends up discovering a virus within the union leaders and a deviation in the Master of Masters plan. As I also kind of mentioned earlier, I think Master Ava actually had another encounter with Lucio where she learned about that coming darkness, and she used that power to bring herself to the world line that the union leaders were living in. That power being the power of waking, of course, and she used it to save the union leaders and the Keyblade wielders from that world, though abusing that power in the way she did caused her to lose herself in the process, similar to how Sora did in Kingdom Hearts 3. That's why Lucio said she carried it out with a smile on his face, kind of like he can suspect at what ended up happening with her. I don't think he actually knows what's happening, mainly because of the secret reports kind of hinting to him not truly knowing what went down. Based off Secret Report number 11, it states as follows: the virus has begun a strange undertaking, a reckless plot to allow the Five to escape into another world line. Surely such a thing can't be possible. We're talking about the same trick that allowed the Dandelions to transfer to other world lines after the Keyblade War. But these children are no masters. They haven't the means, unless, of course, a certain lady of magic summoned here from the future knows knows more than I do. Now, this is actually pretty important. As of right now, I'm honestly not too sure on who this Lady of Magic is. I know many people speculate that it's probably Maleficent, but what would that really mean in the grand scheme of things? Is he suspecting Maleficent is who really helped the Union leaders escape this world line? What would the Lady of Magic really do? Because the Lady of Magic that he met as Darkness was Maleficent. That's the only Lady of Magic we really referred to throughout the Kingdom Hearts series. But as we can even see here, I think the grand point is that Luxu doesn't actually know what went down. He does know the virus is trying to skip this whole plot, as he says, a reckless plot to allow the five to escape into another world line. They're trying to escape the ruin that's going to befall this world. And as he states even afterwards, that these are kids, these aren't masters or anything, so it'd be impossible for them to have such a power to let them exchange world lines, which is why I really am reinforcing that I believe that it was Ava who went to go and rescue them, who would definitely, as a master, would definitely have the power to save them. She made it her mission to save them, you could even say, but following through with that mission, causing her to lose herself, would be exactly the reason why she couldn't be summoned anymore. But what do you think? Do you think Ava suffered this fate or something along these lines? Or do you have another idea of what may have happened to her? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you're interested in how Brain may be a time traveler from the future, or of which of the Union leader actually gets the no-name Keyblade, subscribing to the channel with notifications turned on is exactly what you're looking for. If you enjoyed and haven't already, leaving a like will show me you enjoyed this video and help YouTube recommend this even more to Kingdom Hearts fans. Thank you all so much for watching. My name is KingdomAce, and remember, my loyal knights, to always fly skyward.